Pesticides are used by big farming companies to kill off populations of insects that are eating their crops. Pesticides are used year-round to protect crops, but not just crops, but natural forests, homes, and even animals. What effects does this fire and forget product have on other organisms? What happens to water resources and soil when too much is applied? When pesticides are used in quantities greater than recommended, the excess pesticides are washed into the soil by rain. The rain forms a tight bond with pesticides and is now part of the groundwater. As the pesticide water slowly flows down to the groundwater, it contaminates all of the layers that it passes through. This pesticide-contaminated water will eventually get into the groundwater, where it can move a lot faster, covering more distance in less time, and reach places originally inconceivable. This groundwater eventually gets into rivers and streams, polluting fishing grounds and swimming areas. It cannot be denied that most fish will at some point consume or otherwise absorb pesticides and other poisons in their lifetimes. Even though it may seem like a small amount, what happens to their predators that eat multiple fish? It is only possible that they, and their predators alike, are receiving large amounts of deadly chemicals. In rivers, pesticides travel unnoticed to water treatment plants, where chemicals cannot be picked out individually due to the number of pesticides, poisons, and medicines that are put into the water.
The soil of the earth is something that people and other animals could not live without. Without the earth's soil, we wouldn't have plants, which would mean we wouldn't even be alive. Soil is very complex, being made from many different organisms. Some examples of this are the rocks from volcanoes and the bits of rock worn away from boulders. Life forms soil, and small creatures keep the soil alive. Thus, the soil constantly changes from what life lives and die around it. The most valuable organisms are the smallest. The three important organisms are bacteria, fungi, and algae, which all help to reduce decay. They take the remains of plants and animals and convert them down into the component minerals. Other organisms that are important to the soil are mites and wingless insects. They do important work to break down plants and other litter of the forest floor to turn it into soil. The creatures are specialized, meaning that one creature could be in charge of breaking down one set of material, while another creature is in charge of a different material. Once again, there is another set of life forms that work in the soil. Some live under the soil, and others live on top of it. As these animals move up and down through the soil, they aerate it, improve the drainage and penetration of the water to plant roots. An example of a life form that does this is the earthworm. The worm brings soil from the bottom up and the soil from the top down, thus rotating the earth. The soil is the home of a community of organisms all working together to make soil out or plant and animals to keep it alive. But when pesticides are dumped into the earth, it does harm to the earth. Some cases show that natural chemical process that happens in the soil are interrupted. An example of this would be when the process of eutrophication, the process of making nitrogen in the air available to the plants on the ground, is interrupted by, let's say, by herbicide. 2,4-D interrupts the eutrophication. Insecticides do much harm to the balance of organisms to the soil. They can increase one organism's population while killing of another. These changes change the productivity of the soil. Insecticides stay in the soil for a long time. Insecticides have been recovered in soil tests as long as 12 years after they were introduced into the soil. Even moderate amount of insecticides applied to the soil, the problems remain because that person will probably repeat the treatment several times. Year after year, it will be applied until there is a high accumulation of the poison in the earth.
To conclude, when pesticides get into water, they can do damage beyond what's predicted and kill unintended targets. The overuse of pesticides can lead to the extinction of entire fish populations. This reduces the food production in areas such as Puget Sound and areas near the Columbia River. Pesticides do more harm than good. We don't realize it, but using pesticides, even on inland property, can seep into the ground and run off into rivers. Furthermore, the use of pesticides is seen in the soil of the earth. Pesticides hurt more than help, and pesticides can still be found in soil for a very long time. Traces of pesticides can never really be removed. Also, pesticides affect the organisms in the soil that break things down. This means that the threat of pesticides wiping out populations and making others to become more dominant is present. So what can we do about pesticides in soil and water? What we believe we should do is reduce the use of pesticides and to look for an alternative. If pesticides are used it should be regulated so that not as much poisons accumulate in water and soil.